G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. Now today we're going to talk about mobilization in Ukraine to boost troop numbers. We're going to talk about the Senate in America and aid going in towards Ukraine and what has exactly happened there. As we know, today was a big day for that vote. And of course, in the end, we're going to talk about the maps and also Wagner PMC. But we're going to do the opposite of usual. And we're going to actually look at the maps in the very start, because today we have claims all over social media that Ukraine is withdrawing from Avdiivka. And there's also claims that now supply routes in and out have been cut. Now we are going to have a look at what's going on here and talk about the reality of what I see actually happening down here. As we do know, the misinformation, disinformation space is massive. And of course, releasing mis and disinformation can have an effect on troop morale, movements, and command and control at the front line in a war where everything is so public through social media as well. So of course, in the center, we have Ukraine and the capital of Kyiv up here. Red areas occupied since 22 and the purple since 2014, actually February 2014, and it's coming up on 10 years that Crimea has been annexed. But where we're going to zoom in is into the Donetsk Oblast and Avdiivka. Now, what is Russia's ultimate goal here? We'll just zoom back out because you can see the borderline here a little bit better. So, of course, this is Donetsk by this borderline that is running through here. And, of course, this is what Russia ultimately want, is they want to control the entire Donetsk Oblast, and of course they want to control things like the Zap Oblast. But Donetsk, they've said it is very important to them, and that's why they've held this area down here since 2014. But let's zoom in and we'll go back and forth on the maps and have a look. And as we've seen the last few days, Russia has filled in some areas up in the north, threatening these supply routes that many are claiming are now cut off. So we'll come back from the 5th to the 6th and then to the 7th, which is the most recent update we have. This map is still a good while behind, maybe 15 or 16 hours. So it'll be very interesting to see where this actually moves in the next few hours, whenever this actually does update. And let's have a look across here. This is 5 kilometers, not even a heavy machine gun, a light machine gun from here will cover a vast way into this open, flat ground. And we've spoken in length about this is the problem down here that Bakhmut didn't have. Bakhmut had those rolling hills more so than it looks on the map. Therefore, your range of point-to-point weapons like that are limited and your supply routes are easier to cover and move through there. And even the war since then has progressed a lot with the ISR capability of drones, that the supply routes through here are limited at best, at absolute worst, cut off. And that is what many sort of pro-Russian or maybe try to say unbiased channels are saying. My title is probably something in that line because clickbait's the only way to be in apparently war reporting these days, but it is coming to a head. It is developing into a dire situation in here. And one thing that we have got more confirmation on is that we know Russia has been using their FAB, the fuel air bombs in Avdiivka. Now, of course, these are like a glide bomb. A fuel air bomb, expends fuel air mixes and then creates a much larger explosion to typically, like, say, just throwing a grenade. And these have been proven to be an effective and cheap alternative to more advanced systems. And these range anywhere from 250 kilograms up to 2,000 kilograms and have many kilometers of range gliding off those aircraft. We've also seen Ka-52 helicopters being used here as well. Although with some of the footage of those, I doubt when it was, just for how the weather actually looks. So let's firstly have a look at the weather and see what both Ukraine and Russia are dealing with here. But this weather, bad weather, yes, it will have an effect on Russia's offensive, but it will also have an effect if Ukraine is trying to pull out what exactly is happening here. So the weather, it isn't good. It is -1 at night, so below freezing. And we've got a lot of rain coming in as well. And you can see over the next, how long is this, 10 days, you can see just the amount of chance of rain, the wind, as well as how cold it is going to be, with the lowest point here at -6. So, of course, the conditions here are brutal and will absolutely affect both defensive and offensive operations. Now, where, I guess, did this all start? So many channels are claiming this, but Suryak, who we see the maps are pretty bloody close all the time, sometimes is in front, has said this. During the last hours, Russian army was able to consolidate control over the railway bridge, cutting off the northern supply route. Of course, this is the railway coming down through here. In view of the situation, the Ukrainian command finally gave the go-ahead for the evacuation of its troops from the city of Avdiivka. The battle for the city is already lost for the Ukrainian army. Now, that is what is being said here. And we will wait and see when the maps update, because these are big claims. But that said, how many supply routes realistically are there for Ukraine into here? Especially poor weather conditions mean going off track through here, you more risk, maybe tracked vehicles, wheeled vehicles. The risk of getting bogged is very, very high. That, there's not far, so these supply routes could be cut off. We've spoken about how, maybe not easily, but how this is a real risk. Now, let's look at then the next one. That situation in the Avdiivka front, Russian army continue advancing along the streets of these and Donetsk as Ukrainian army retreats towards this street. In addition, Russian forces took control over a section of the railway and part of the summer cottage area, the Dushes, which allowed to move the front line closer to the automobile depot. So talking about the expansion up here in the north, saying that this has expanded fairly greatly. So if we can bring this back up, I don't know if it'll actually let me draw this as well, but saying something like this in this area, of course, risking the supply route in here. And of course, this supply route is going to be limited down to the south as well. So saying that a lot of these streets in here, and you'll recognize these streets from where he's saying here. Let's have a look. Right here, and Donetsk through here. So, these streets that it is, coming to a fold in here. And when we talk of the railway, you can see that this railway then splits off down into this region as well. So definitely a very important area. Now let's continue on this. During the afternoon and evening, several FAB, fuel air bombs, so the glide bombs we talked about, were launched to the entire private sector and the neighbouring areas of the coke plant in order to accelerate the advances of Avdiivka following the beginning of the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the city. Road towards Sevzheny was shelled today, targeting the first troops. Okay, so this is this road from Avdiivka through to here. Of course, this is still very, very close at under 1.5 kilometres from then that zero line. Of course, seen by this blue line here, saying that these FABs and shelling were hitting all along this railway up through here, as well as the supply routes both in and out of that region, of course, making it very difficult to then move. This continues. Today, I saw something funny on social media. An individual who uses his opinion as an argument of authority and reliable source invited this account to receive a massive block for reporting the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops in Avdiivka. We see this. I've had this. People that just disagree with you absolutely hound you, and they'll get their full bloody all their followers and all those who agree with them to try and just mass report you to get you blocked. Truth is not with me, but with the situation on the ground. Ukrainian troops have mined a new sector, which is where the troops are leaving from. Now, Ukraine using landmines, well, they've signed some treaties not to do that, but no one will enforce it. Anyway, we're going to talk about this in an interview tomorrow. Anyway, while another group of Ukrainian forces are making a big effort to keep the Russians occupied while the evacuation of the city is taking place. In an interview you'll see in a couple of days, we talk about how hard it is actually to withdraw for a delaying force to then move back out. The situation is very reminiscent of what happened in Soledar when Ukrainian troops began to leave just hours before the collapse of the front. At that time, Twitter experts began to accuse those reporting the withdrawal as liars. We all know how the Battle of Soledar ended. Let the experts continue to make fools of themselves. Good night and see you tomorrow. So once this map updates, once we get more updates, we'll know exactly what is happening here. But Suryak, who is very reliable on a lot of this and does a lot of map corrections when he gets something wrong, he's basically confirming that this is happening, that there is a movement out, that it's sort of not looking like at the moment because they're trying to have this delay force to allow the withdrawal of the mass numbers, and then those last ones will move out from there. And like I said, this is just very, very reminiscent of what we saw in Bakhmut in its final days. Of course, that went for much, much longer, but I believe that Avdiivka has a higher risk of encirclement than Bakhmut ever did. Now, our military summary had this, and I'm stealing it off him. This shows a topographical map showing where the movement of the Russian line is. And we can just see over the last month where this has moved. But the reason that this is interesting is you can see the high ground, the limited high ground that Russia has actually gotten in the east and also in the north of Avdiivka. Now, this area is very flat, so any high ground is incredibly important. The center of Avdiivka sort of has a rolling hill throughout it. We'll just have a quick squeeze at how this is then looking, and then we'll go on to Novomalyivka because that is important too. So the only real high ground is on then this eastern flank of Avdiivka that we can see rolling. You can sort of see that rolling down into here, and Avdiivka itself is very flat, but there are some little bits and pieces. But when there's nothing, those little bits and pieces become very, very important. Of course, where Surak is talking about is these roads leading out through these areas as being cut off down here, as well as the rail bridge here and advancing down into the south of Avdiivka. Of course, troops are going to be right up in these areas, and this is a very, very dangerous location to be for how far you got to come out, and as well as this actually pincer maneuver down on this area. Now, there is a lot of rumor that Zelensky is actually waiting for the fall of Avdiivka to then sack General Zaluzny in order to limit the fallout because of the popularity of Zaluzny, that this is a failure, sack him at the same time, reason for that, and that is a way to get out. As we know, Zelensky's popularity has been falling and Zaluzny's is very, very high. So then we're just going to move south of Avdiivka down to Mariinka here, and let's see, the past few days we do see Russia just get a little bit more control out here, and then we do have this map from Surak that shows a little bit different to this. So it's showing that it's actually got a little bit more control, that this has been filled in across here, but it's saying that it's got a bit more up near Ozakava here. Situation west of Donetsk. Russian army advance inside Herovka, taking control over the most northern shore of this pond. So moving up through these like linear towns up here. As we know, this is a full important area from Vuhledar, Mariinka, Avdiivka for the control of this whole oblast, this region down here for Russia. That is one of their ultimate goals here. Now, we don't have a, what's it called, Surak map update, but Deep State map does show that Russia has got a lot more control in Novomalyivka. We have seen that Russia has extended its control here over the past few weeks, and from yesterday till then today, we do see this jump up into the center of Novomalyivka here. So out of this tree line up to here, let's give this a quick measure. And what is that? 2.6 kilometers. Remember, from either Russian or Ukrainian gains over the past 12 months, when we have increases of 2 kilometers, go a kilometer, that is a hell of a lot considering how slowly the front line is moving everywhere. And the reason that that can be moved up like that is because of this footage here. Now you just see the sheer destruction, wowzers, of everything here. But there has been a Russian flag right here raised on this eastern side of Novomalyivka, as this is getting somewhat encircled as well in here, as simultaneously then on Avdiivka to the north as well. Somewhere we always talk about is then Bakhmut. Bakhmut is the version 1 of what Avdiivka is seeming to be. There's no change shown on this map, but where we're going to be looking is just up in the north, what I call the north of Bakhmut, which is Bodanivka here. And we have then this map update from Surak that Russian army recaptured the area west of Bodanivka that it had lost 8 days ago. This hasn't been updated, but it is looking still, in my eye, fairly similar. We know that this is fluid here now. Anyone who follows Surak, which you should follow if you don't, you'll know I'm missing a few slides off this, but the slides that he had are map corrections, so I guess we'll catch up on that, but I'm more concerned with what is made or lost over the past 24 hours to keep this quick. But other than that, we don't really see much change except for one I did forget up here near Terny. We know that Russia has made gains near Yampalivka, Terny. This is being across multiple maps being confirmed, but it does look like Russia has lost some ground. So let's go from the 4th to the 5th to the 6th, that Russia expanded control, and then down to the 7th, that Ukraine did expand more ground into where Russia's line is here. Well, at least extending then grey zone. It hasn't actually, because it would be blue if they'd made more ground in here, but it has actually pushed Russia back. Just because you've pushed them back doesn't necessarily mean you've made ground, but that then the control that they have has moved. And, buddy, what am I doing wrapping up maps? There's something very important on this map. Now, the Thankyou bridgehead across here that we see, this has changed fairly dramatically for the size of it and the amount of force that everyone is putting into this smaller bridgehead across here. You'll hear myself and Soldier X talk about this. We haven't seen this change for a long time, albeit a hell of a lot of rumours about it. So it has thinned out to this road, but has lengthened. So Russia has lost control of areas, and so has Ukraine. Russia has lost more control than Ukraine has lost in here. It's only a minor change up to this road here, but Ukraine has managed to lengthen this area here. We know there's heavy fighting going on because it's such a small area and very, very difficult to actually resupply and supply your troops in this region. But I think that is a good look at the maps for today, and with Avdiivka, of course, which should be on the tip of everyone's tongue, because this is incredibly important to the front line, not the politics shit, actual movements on the front line. And on my comments when I last put it up, everyone's going, no one's talking about this, which they should, because this is very, very important as both sides pour troops and supplies into here. It should be talked about more, but I will keep up to date with it no matter how it is looking. I won't just report one-sided. Now, Wagner PMC. It seems like we're talking about them every day, but they've made themselves sort of known again on the Ukrainian battle space after being disbanded and absorbed into the Russian armed forces. So, after their mutiny, that Russia had more control of what was happening there. But there's some ins and outs of this as well, with what's happening in Africa, what's happening in Belarus, as well as what's happening in Russia with this. Yes, they've been disbanded, but they're still operating interestingly. And we're going to look over a video here from who actually took over since Yevgeny Prigozhin had that small accident. Anyway, having taken command of Wagner Group, hero of Russia, Anton Elizarov, aka Lotus, History Legends has a great video on who is the leaders of Wagner and breaks down who these guys are. Lotus, very interesting character, commented on the disinformation disseminated by some channels, including those controlled by the MOD, about the detention and dissolution of the musical group. Now, we are going to watch this and look at what then the Ministry of Defence has released today about this. Now, you see that these are named Doof Doof and No Doof. This one's got like mad techno music in it and like English dubbed. It's not subtitled. We're going to do the subtitled one, but the subtitled one doesn't have this initial question in it to Lotus.
Hello, Anton. Information has come from various sources. From open sources, first of all, you disappeared somewhere, you were detained. But I see you are in perfect health, in perfect order. Please comment on this situation.
Well, first of all, I want to say hello to everyone.
Okay, we're going to go to the other one, but listen to the music kick up.
So on the Cossack.
Bangers. And I've probably been copyright struck. But anyway, we're good. It's not Sandstorm. First of all, I want to say hello to everyone who is watching the video. Guys, everything is fine with me. I'm alive and well. I'm in the Cossack camps in the headquarters. For fans of conspiracy theories, I could explain the following, that I was flying to Mars to negotiate with Decepticons. They want us to, talking about, of course, going to the Kremlin. They agreed the number of our calls will be 45. 6,000 people will approach Line 1 and access training for the Decepticon squad. This is for lovers of conspiracy theories, sudden disappearances, and so on. For everyone else who is in the topic, I want to explain the following. We continue to work on the African continent and continue to work in Belarus, of course, training up the Belarusian soldiers, and we don't know where that's going to go. Many are speculating that there's going to be a new front open from Belarus, and we actually also know that the Wagner PMC are not only training Belarusian military, they're also training police to become more like combat soldiery. For the benefit of Russia, we are working and quite successfully. I should add that training those cops is probably because there is a risk of Ukrainian, some of these militia groups crossing into Belarus, like we've seen in Belgorod as well. move forward. At the moment, I'm in the Cossack camps. We're building the camp here so that the units that will be formed and become part of the volunteer corps of the Russian Guard could arrive and settle. Go to the camp itself. I'll go, let's show you, and then we have, I should have had the banger one for this. And then we see traditional military camp here. Nothing special, but this is a field. The Cossack camps continues to grow, to be built, and for the people who arrive in Russia and places ready for the Russians. So expect to see how whatever banner that Wagner come back under, I can't see them giving up their banner, even if they're called something else. It'll be interesting to see. Then the MOD has released this today. The new field commander of the Russian private military company, Wagner Lotus, has made his first video statement since the death of Yevgeny Prigozhin and the former field commander Dmitry Utkin in the suspicious plane crash. In this video, he detailed the location of Wagner's new headquarters, the Kozachi Legi Cossack camps, almost certainly in Rostov, southern Russia, co-located with the barracks of Russia's 150th Motor Rifle Division. ASL further claimed that Wagner's new base would also house the volunteer corps of Rosgvardia, which is being absorbed sort of into, implicitly confirming Wagner's subordination. Is preparing a new volunteer corps formation experienced Wagner personnel to reinforce Russia's war effort. So we will see them back in Russia at some point. And I've seen some pages claiming that they're working already in Avdiivka as well, but more in a training on the ground position of the Russian elements there. The Russian state highly likely authorized the construction of Wagner's new base and highly likely perceives that it's subordinating Russia to Rosgvardia. He's also removed any potential threat Wagner may pose to Russia's regime because they don't want them turning back around like they did last time. But it will be interesting to see where this goes. And in my opinion, in this war, we have not seen the end of Wagner PMC. And I think the Kremlin know this. Last year, the biggest win for Russia the whole time was made by Wagner PMC. And it was privately funded, sort of. And they could say that it wasn't their casualties. So it's sort of a perfect example there. And Russia get to sit back and go, well, that's not us committing whatever happens, that there is that plausible deniability. Now, on to boring politics, but incredibly important politics, Republicans in the US Senate have defeated the bipartisan bill that was to bolster US-Mexico border security and, of course, the $60 billion for Ukraine's defense. Now, this has taken months to negotiate, and we knew that this was likely to fail because even as an outsider looking in, not even listening to people say that this is going to fail, but an outsider looking in, the bill from October through till yesterday had barely changed. It was like the exact same, basically, although the bill hasn't quite been killed yet. And there's going to be a new vote tomorrow in America, of course, this being the 8th of February in America, so it'll be the 9th in Australia, that they're proposing to split the bill. So this procedural vote is on whether to advance foreign aid packages that includes funds for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan, but then no reforms on border policy. So it is splitting it apart on where they're having issues. And we've heard this proposed before. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has told the press, we will recess until tomorrow and give our Republican colleagues time to figure themselves out. That said, I don't know if splitting it is still going to get this across the line. What's going to get it across the line is working together, maybe changing some shit and border reforms that Republicans see as reasonable. And again, no one knows if this will actually pass in the Senate, and political speakers have noted that even if this does get through the Senate, it's going to have a very hard time in the House of Representatives, where the Republican opposition to Ukraine and Ukrainian aid is very strong. So I got asked to speak about this today, and you ask, you shall receive. Ukrainian Parliament yesterday approved a law to strengthen mobilization in its first reading. Now, this received 243 votes out of the required 226, so it will go on to further readings. Now, I was reading only the other day on February the 6th, and this is when it was related, that Dmitry Lebanits, who is the Ukrainian Commissioner for Human Rights, has taken to his Telegram concerned that this bill contains provisions that actually contradict the constitution of Ukraine. Although in the vote yesterday, he still called for the document to be adapted in its first reading, which has gone through, and said that it will be revised in its second reading. So let's have a look firstly at what is changing in this bill, and then we'll look at what Lebanits has to say about where he sees that it actually goes against the Constitution. Now, this is lone conscription age from 27 to 25. Now, these things, this is just obvious that Ukraine is having a personnel and manning struggle, and a struggle actually getting guys to volunteer to go and fight as this war becomes more bloody. And as Ukraine has said, it needs to increase its numbers, with figures from 450 to 500,000 new troops thrown around. So lowering the age by 2 years, introducing a new measure against those who ignore conscription notices, including restrictions on driving vehicles and account blocking. Restrictions will be imposed by court decision. So if you ignore them, next thing, you won't be able to drive, your bank account will be blocked. Interesting, we saw Canada do that with far less serious things. Military registration is mandatory for conscripts living outside Ukraine. In some cases, if they fail to comply, they will be denied new documents at the consulate, so to stay on wherever they are. So pulling from other nations, which people have said is interesting in the law. Conscription notices may be sent electronically, so you can just get a bloody text or a ding on an app and you are conscripted. Of course, many civilians, but not only in Ukraine but worldwide, have been very critical of the draft office, as there's no shortage of videos of officers handing out these conscription notices on the streets, in public transport, at home, and often come to blows. Now let's look at where Dmitry Lubinets is saying this is actually unconstitutional. This is on his official Telegram, but I have got it translated, just Google Translate across. What's wrong with the new bill? In general, I, the Ombudsman of Ukraine, agree the fact that our state should normatively improve issues related to mobilization, preparation, and mobilization itself. However, this must comply with the provisions of the Constitution of Ukraine and international agreements in the field of human rights. Unfortunately, the government draft law, this number, regarding mobilization rules has a number of contradictory provisions this time as well. The number of comments on the draft law were voiced by my representative for social and economic rights, Alena Kolobradova, at the Committee for the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine and on social policy and protection of veterans' rights. Also, the corresponding letter has already been sent to the relevant Committee on National Security, Defence and Intelligence. In total, comments on the draft law of mobilisation took up as many as 9 pages. So there's obviously some things in it which they are seeing as wrong. The normative case is the issue of the procedure of travelling abroad for men aged 18 to 60 who are on military registration or excluded from it in accordance with established procedures. So, of course, men aged 18 to 60 cannot go overseas because of what is between your legs. Here, the question is in the notes. The wording remove and exclude from the military record, which is indicated in the military ticket, in practice becomes a problem that needs to be resolved. The draft law also states that the military command may establish a temporary restriction on the right of a citizen of Ukraine to leave the country. However, according to requirements Article 17 of the Constitution of Ukraine, the armed forces and other military formations cannot be used by anyone to limit the rights and freedoms of citizens. So these proposed changes contradict the Constitution of Ukraine. In addition, the draft law proposes to provide for the obligation to register the electronic account of conscripts, reservists, for failure of which the latter bear the legal responsibility defined by the law. However, this provision of the draft law does not correspond to the provisions of the Constitution of Ukraine, the law of Ukraine on the protection of personal data, the legal positions of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine regarding to the official interpretation of the right to personal and family life. So there's obviously some issues in this with the Constitution. That said, in time of war, I don't know how much there's actually going to be a care when the, desperate for more and more numbers, and we've heard up to then 500,000 new people drafted, conscripted, mobilized to go and fight in now this long and bloody war. So I guess you can speculate about why there's a need for this and what is happening on the front line when we're being told, that everything is sort of going okay, that it's not looking like this currently. But Legends, I've got a couple of interviews coming up for you over the next few days, and I really hope you enjoy those. How is this 30 minutes long? Anyway, look after yourselves. If you'd like to support me, links down below, Patreon, merch, whatever, but never feel the need. Look after yourselves, and I'll speak to you tomorrow with an update on Avdiivka, I guess. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.